Most people fail in relationships not because they don't try, but because they misunderstand how the female mind actually works. They chase logic where emotion governs, stability where perception shifts, and certainty where context rules. Today, we are going to dismantle the illusions and explain the female mind as it truly operates beneath the surface. Emotion is the most misunderstood word when it comes to the female mind. The moment emotion enters the conversation, people assume weakness, loss of control, or irrational behavior. But this assumption is not just wrong, it is lazy thinking. Emotion in the female psyche is not noise in the system, it is the system. It is information, memory, prediction, and survival intelligence operating simultaneously. When a woman feels something strongly, she is not overwhelmed by emotion, she is processing layers of reality at once. Emotion acts as a shortcut to meaning. Instead of dissecting an event piece by piece, the female mind absorbs tone, intention, history, and context in a single emotional response. This is not inefficiency, this is compression. Just like advanced software reduces massive data into usable signals, emotion condenses complex experiences into intuitive understanding. Here is where most people fail. They try to argue with emotion using logic, not realizing that logic enters after emotion has already evaluated the situation. Logic explains, emotion decides. By the time words are spoken, the internal verdict is often already formed. That is why saying calm down never works. You are not calming chaos, you are dismissing data. The female mind uses emotion the way a radar uses signals. It detects subtle changes long before visible evidence appears. A shift in behavior, a pause that lasts a second too long, a tone that doesn't match the words. These things are emotionally registered before they are consciously identified. And once registered, they shape perception instantly. This is why emotional memory in women is powerful, not because they hold grudges, but because emotional experiences are stored with high resolution. Facts fade, feelings imprint. The brain remembers what mattered for survival and connection. Emotion marks importance. If something hurt deeply, it mattered deeply. If something felt safe, it becomes a reference point for trust. Calling this weakness is like calling a microscope fragile because it sees what the naked eye cannot. Another illusion is that emotional reactions are impulsive. In reality, many emotional responses are the result of accumulated patterns. The reaction you see is often the final signal after repeated internal warnings were ignored. What looks sudden is usually delayed. What looks exaggerated is often compressed, history surfacing all at once. The female mind does not separate thinking and feeling. They are intertwined. Emotion fuels insight. Insight guides choice. This integration allows rapid decision making in social and relational environments where logic alone is too slow. You cannot spreadsheet human intention. You have to feel it. This is also why emotional invalidation damages trust so deeply. When emotion is dismissed, the message received is not, "You're wrong," but your perception of reality is unreliable. Over time, this erodes connection, not because of disagreement, but because the core processing system is being attacked. Strength in the female mind is not emotional suppression. It is emotional navigation, the ability to feel deeply without losing direction, to sense shifts before collapse, to detect danger before it becomes obvious. Emotion sharpens awareness. It does not dull it. When you understand this, communication changes. You stop asking, "Is this logical?" and start asking, "What information is this emotion carrying?" Because behind every emotional response is an assessment of safety, meaning, and alignment that has already been calculated beneath conscious thought. To understand the female mind, you must first understand this: attachment is not dependency, and safety is not comfort. In the female psyche, attachment is a biological and psychological calibration system. It determines how reality itself is perceived. When emotional safety is present, the world feels navigable. When it is absent, the same world feels unpredictable, even hostile. This shift is not imagined, it is neurological. The female mind does not evaluate reality in isolation. It evaluates reality in relation to connection. This is why the same situation can feel entirely different depending on who she is with, how she feels around them, and whether emotional security has been established. Safety becomes the lens through which events are interpreted. Without that lens, perception fragments. Many misunderstand this and assume that women seek reassurance because they are insecure. In truth, reassurance stabilizes the attachment system, allowing the mind to function without constantly scanning for threat. When safety is established, emotional energy is freed, creativity increases, communication becomes clearer, trust deepens. Without safety, the mind remains alert, protective, and cautious, not weak but vigilant. Attachment in the female mind is deeply tied to consistency, not control. Consistency. Predictable emotional presence signals reliability. It tells the subconscious that energy does not need to be spent preparing for abandonment, emotional withdrawal, or sudden shifts. When consistency breaks, even subtly perception begins to distort. Neutral actions feel suspicious. Silence feels loud. Distance feels intentional. This is why emotional unpredictability creates anxiety even in strong, self-aware women. The issue is not confidence. It is biological pattern recognition. The mind is asking one question: is this environment stable enough for emotional investment? If the answer becomes unclear, attachment begins to weaken, not as punishment, but as protection. Here is the part rarely spoken about. Emotional safety is not created through words. It is created through alignment between words and behavior. The female mind tracks this alignment relentlessly. Promises without follow-through damage perception. Affection without presence feels hollow. Apologies without change registers manipulation. Over time, the mind recalibrates its expectations of reality itself. When safety is strong, perception becomes generous. Flaws are contextualized. Mistakes are forgiven. Ambiguity is tolerated. When safety erodes, perception sharpens defensively. Small issues become magnified. Trust narrows. Emotional distance increases. This is not emotional volatility. It is adaptive response. Attachment also influences memory. The female mind remembers emotional states more vividly than chronological events. How she felt in moments of closeness becomes a reference point. How she felt during moments of insecurity becomes a warning sign. Reality is not remembered as a timeline, but as emotional patterns. This is why arguments often fail when they focus on facts. Facts do not repair attachment. Emotional repair does. You cannot reason someone back into safety. Safety must be felt, not explained. Until safety returns, perception remains filtered through threat awareness. The greatest illusion is believing that attachment makes women lose themselves. In reality, secure attachment allows the female mind to expand. Independence thrives where safety exists. Expression flourishes where trust is stable. Detachment happens not when women are too attached, but when attachment no longer feels safe. Understanding this changes everything. You stop asking why reactions seem intense and start recognizing that perception itself has shifted. You realize that restoring safety restores clarity. That when attachment is secure, reality becomes softer, more flexible, and more forgiving. And when it isn't, the mind does exactly what it was designed to do. It protects itself by changing how it sees the world. One of the most damaging myths about the female mind is the belief that contradiction equals confusion. That when a woman changes her mind, shifts her feelings, or reacts differently than before, she must be unsure, unstable, or incapable of clarity. This belief comes from expecting linear thinking in a mind that was never designed to move in straight lines. The female psyche operates in layers, not lanes. Multiple truths can exist at the same time without cancelling each other out. She can want closeness and space, strength and softness, independence and connection. These are not opposites in her internal world. They are parallel needs responding to different emotional conditions. What looks like contradiction is often context sensitivity. The female mind does not make decisions in a vacuum. It responds to emotional atmosphere, relational energy, and perceived intention. When these variables change, her responses adapt. This is not inconsistency. This is situational intelligence. A woman may say she wants honesty, then feel hurt by a truth that lacks empathy. Not because she lied about what she wanted, but because honesty without emotional awareness feels unsafe. She may say she values independence, then desire reassurance in moments of vulnerability. Not because she is dependent, but because emotional states shift and needs evolve with them. The mistake people make is freezing statements in time and expecting them to remain static across changing emotional landscapes. The female mind does not speak in absolutes. It speaks in conditions. What she feels is true within the emotional context of that moment. When the context changes, so does the truth she is responding to. This is why trying to catch a woman in contradiction is pointless. You are arguing with snapshots instead of understanding the motion. Her mind is not revising reality, it is updating it. The problem is not that she changed. The problem is that the environment did. Contradiction also arises from internal conflict, not confusion. The female mind is capable of holding tension between opposing desires without resolving them immediately. This allows deeper processing. Instead of choosing prematurely, she explores how each option feels. This exploration can look like indecision to an outside observer, but internally it is refinement. Men often externalize decision-making. Women internalize it. They simulate outcomes emotionally before acting. This simulation can produce fluctuating expressions as the mind tests different emotional responses. What you hear out loud is often a work in progress, not a final verdict. Another illusion is assuming emotional reactions must be consistent to be valid. Emotional consistency is not realism. Human experience is dynamic. Expecting someone to feel the same way under different emotional conditions is not logic. It is denial of psychology. The female mind also communicates differently. She may express a feeling not as a fixed position, but as a signal. Saying, "I'm fine" might mean, "I don't feel safe explaining this right now." Saying, "I need space" might mean, "I need reassurance without pressure." These are not lies. They are emotional shorthand shaped by safety and timing. Contradiction becomes confusing only when you listen to words without listening to the emotional state beneath them. Words are surface-level data. Emotion is the operating system. If you ignore the operating system, nothing makes sense. When you stop demanding linear consistency and start tracking emotional patterns, clarity emerges. You notice that reactions follow feelings, not logic debates. That shifts occur after trust changes, not randomly. That what appears unpredictable is actually responsive. The female mind is not unstable because it evolves. It is adaptive. It adjusts to emotional feedback in real time. What frustrates those who misunderstand it is not contradiction itself. but the loss of control over predictable outcomes. Once you realize that contradiction is not confusion but complexity, you stop arguing and start observing. You stop asking why she changed and start asking what changed around her. And in that shift, misunderstanding dissolves into insight. The final misunderstanding of the female mind comes from confusing the story told about it with the system that actually runs it. Society creates illusions because mechanisms are harder to face. Illusions are simple, dramatic, and emotionally convenient. Mechanisms are precise, uncomfortable, and indifferent to opinion. When it comes to the female psyche, most people interact with the illusion and never question what lies beneath it. The illusion says women are mysterious, unpredictable, emotionally driven by whim. The mechanism says the female mind is one of the most finely tuned social processing systems in human psychology. It observes, records, predicts, and adjusts continuously. The illusion treats emotion as chaos. The mechanism reveals it as structure. Romantic narratives reinforce this illusion by exaggerating emotion as passion without explaining its function. Cultural myths label intuition as magic instead of pattern recognition. Emotional shifts are portrayed as drama instead of feedback. These stories make the female mind seem unknowable, when in reality it is highly responsive to environmental input. The mechanism works like this: emotional signals are constantly being collected. Tone, consistency, presence, absence, micro-behaviors, and unspoken intent are processed simultaneously. These inputs are evaluated for alignment and safety. The result is not a conscious calculation but a felt sense of direction. Attraction, trust, withdrawal, or caution emerge naturally from this evaluation. When people operate within the illusion, they focus on outcomes instead of causes. They ask why attraction disappeared, why behavior changed, why reactions intensified. They look for surface explanations while ignoring the underlying mechanism that has been reacting to subtle shifts all along. By the time behavior changes, the mechanism has already concluded its assessment. This is why manipulation fails in the long term. The illusion assumes you can say the right words or perform the right actions to control emotional outcomes. The mechanism does not respond to performance, it responds to coherence. Inconsistency between words and behavior is detected instantly. Intent without integrity is felt as threat. The system recalibrates accordingly. The illusion also suggests that understanding the female mind requires decoding secrets. In reality, it requires honesty, not brutal honesty, emotional honesty. The mechanism does not reward dominance, cleverness, or strategy. It responds to clarity, reliability, and emotional presence. When these are absent, no amount of explanation repairs the damage. Another illusion is believing that logic should override emotion. The mechanism does not oppose logic, it contextualizes it. Logic without emotional alignment feels cold. Emotion without grounding feels unstable. The female mind seeks integration, not hierarchy. When logic dismisses emotion, the system interprets it as invalidation. When emotion overwhelms structure, balance is not theoretical, it is felt. Social conditioning has taught many to fear this mechanism because it cannot be easily controlled. It reacts to who you are, not who you pretend to be. Masks are detected. Emotional incongruence is registered. Even silence carries information. The mechanism never stops reading. This is why people who rely on roles, tactics, or dominance struggle. The illusion gives them false confidence. The mechanism strips it away. What remains is exposure, and exposure feels threatening to those who have never learned emotional literacy. Understanding the mechanism changes interaction entirely. You stop trying to manage reactions and start managing alignment. You stop explaining and start embodying consistency. You stop forcing outcomes and start creating emotional environments where trust naturally forms. The female mind does not punish. It responds. It does not test for power. It tests for coherence. When coherence is present, complexity becomes harmony. When it is absent, even simplicity collapses. Most people never see this because illusions are easier to defend than mechanisms. Illusions protect ego. Mechanisms reveal truth. And the female mind, when understood beyond illusion, is not confusing, chaotic, or unknowable. It is precise, responsive, and relentlessly honest to the emotional reality it is immersed in. What you have just heard is not a theory, and it is not an opinion. It is a framework. When you remove the illusions, the female mind stops looking chaotic and starts looking intentional. Emotion reveals itself as intelligence. Attachment reveals itself as a lens through which reality is perceived. Contradiction reveals itself as layered processing. And beneath it all, a precise mechanism is constantly reading alignment, safety, and truth. The misunderstanding has never been about women being too emotional, too complex, too unpredictable. The misunderstanding has been about expecting a system designed for depth to operate on surface-level rules. Once you stop forcing linear logic onto a contextual mind, clarity replaces frustration. Understanding the female psyche does not give you control over it. It gives you awareness of yourself within it. It exposes where inconsistency breaks trust, where emotional absence creates distance, and where presence restores connection. This is not about changing women. It is about changing how reality is interpreted through emotional intelligence. When illusion falls away, responsibility rises. You realize that attraction, trust, and emotional safety are not demanded. They are earned through coherence, through words that match actions, through presence that does not disappear, through emotional honesty that does not manipulate or withdraw. The female mind is not asking to be figured out. It is responding to what it experiences. And once you understand the system it operates on, you stop reacting to symptoms and start addressing causes. What felt impossible to understand becomes deeply human, grounded, and precise. This is what happens when you stop mythologizing the female mind and start respecting its design.